Hey everyone, it's been a while. I've been very busy lately and that won't stop anytime soon, unfortunately. And it's been so long since the last upload that there was even a build before this one. But with all honesty, I didn't like that one too much, so I decided to skip talking about it. Which is how I ended up here. This is a Poet's Pen and a Squire Rip Inquisitor. I've been meaning to play Rip as an Inquisitor for a little while now. Last league we did a Chieftain Rip build, which was pretty fun to play, but in comparison to today's Shindig, it doesn't even hold a candle to this Boomer. And honestly, this is probably one of, if not my favorite build of all time in the game. Rip is one of those skills that is always a joy to play, and when combined with the elemental resistance shenanigans from the Inquisitor, we get a combination that simply becomes too enjoyable for its own good. Now, getting to this point was actually quite the journey. As I mentioned a while ago in the previous video, one of my goals this league was to farm myself a crystallized omniscience, as I didn't want to farm the currency to trade for one, and I actually did get the blasted amulet after 18 runs of the Syrian Exarch. Lucky me, I know. Using that amulet, I made a different build before this one, that tackled some of the Uber bosses. However, I didn't actually like it in the end because it wasn't as good or fun. So I was left with that Forsaken amulet and attribute stacking gear, which I decided to trade all of it away, and with that currency steamy check I got myself the Squire and the gear required to make this Ripping Inquisitor work. What this means in practice is that this build is a big boy kind of deal, mainly because the star of the show is the Squire, and without it, this will never feel as good to play. So if you came here thinking that there was gonna be a budget version, I'm sorry to say that ain't happening. Having said that, one other big asset to this build, and I think it also applies to any Rip build out there, is the use of Awakened Spell Cascade. I played the character for a while without it and let me just say it was crappy. Crappy in the sense that the clear left a lot to be desired and the damage didn't actually feel worth the investment. So when Awakened Spell Cascade was socketed into the setup, everything changed. However, besides using this big boy shield, there are other shenanigans happening in the background. A lot of funky stuff that I can assure you might even surprise you. So without really having anything else to say, let's just discuss this Boomer's loadout. Also subscribe or something. Anyways, gear time. Alright, let's begin with the stars of this show. First, the Poet's Pen. Socketed spells in this wand will fire whenever you attack with a wand. However, due to the cooldown recovery mechanics this game has, this is gonna translate into having a cap for your attack speed. The base cap is 3.75 attacks per second. Anything above that is gonna break the cast rate for our socketed spells. We are also not investing into any cooldown recovery rate mods on this build, so our overall goal is to keep the attack speed as close to 3.75 attacks per second. To help the damage on our triggered spells, we are gonna use the Squire. The gimmick behind the shield is that socketed support gems on it will apply to the socketed skills on our main weapon, effectively converting the 3 link on the Poet's Pen into a 6 link. This item is mandatory if you plan to have fun playing with the character, and I am not joking one bit with that statement. Moving on, let's talk about the helmet. We want as much mana reservation efficiency on it through deafening essences of loathing alongside eldritch implicits. We also need life, resistances, spell suppression and the +1 to maximum blood charges enchantment. With the helmet done, the body armor is next. As much life, resistances and spell suppression as possible. For eldritch implicits, I really like the maximum resistances modifier, and any other one can be whatever you want, really. However, this needs to be a 6 link because we are gonna throw 5 auras and enlighten into it. For the gloves, we want life, spell suppression, damage against chilled enemies, which is a temple modifier, and the most important thing, physical to cold conversion. At least 40% as long as you are using Anomalous Fist to Lightning, otherwise 50% should be the sweet spot. Moving on to the boots, life, movement speed, resistances, spell suppression and whatever eldritch modifiers you like. I went with some damage and some chaos resistance. For enchantments, movement speed if you haven't been hit recently is my choice. Now for the jewelry, the amulet has fractured life, and using harvest I rolled physical modifiers until I hit +1 level of all physical skill gems. We also need to craft non-channeling skills have negative mana cost, which is mostly here to reduce the cost of Power Siphon and not choke our already tiny mana pool. I also anointed Doomcast. One of the rings has life, increased damage from Leo Unveils, resistances and a minimum frenzy charge. And then I slammed a Crusader Exalt, but got lightning damage against shocked enemies. Not bad, but not what I wanted. Anyways, the other ring has life, increased damage from Leo on Veils, resistances, another minimum frenzy charge, and I slammed a Warlord Exalt and got cash money with the global crit multi. Moving on to the belt, it's the Tactician, for the crit chance, resistances, and some damage. Bonus points if you can get one with an increased life corrupted implicit. Finally, for flasks, a Jade, Taste of Hate, and Bottle Faith. And that is it for the gear, really, kinda thick in some areas. But when you're using a thick item like the Squire, going hard is gonna be kinda required. Honestly, I wouldn't put this build under a budget mindset because 75% of it is gonna rely on the shield alone. Without it, any effort made is not gonna make too much progress. So yeah, with all of that said, let's discuss the skill tree. Honestly, the skill tree is kinda tame. It's definitely one of the skill trees of all time, if I do say so myself. So this is a level 97 Inquisitor, but 96 should suffice. For the Ascendancy, it's a standard procedure: Righteous Providence, Inevitable Judgment, Augury of Penitence, and Sanctuary, in that order. Now for the rather simple skill tree, our first goal is rushing towards Aura Reservation with Sovereignty, grabbing life on the way there. From there, we are gonna rush towards the Shadow area, but first we gotta make a stop with more Aura Reservation efficiency with Charisma. Then, we can move towards the Shadow Start, taking life, crit, and damage. Once we've got that covered, we take pretty much everything else that can involve damage, life, and whatever else is on the way. Seriously. Heck, we even backtrack to the Templar starting area for more life and damage. However, we've got a couple of masteries to talk about. We obviously want the Mana Reservation Mastery and another Reservation Mastery for damage per aura affecting us. But we also want life masteries for reduced life cost of skills and Vitality Mana Reservation. Alongside those, we also take the Critical Mastery for increased effect of non-damaging elements from crits, and another Crit Mastery for crit multi against unique enemies. We're also gonna take the Physis extra damage of a random element mastery, and heck, my level 97 point went to the evasion rating from the Body Armor Mastery. With those out of the way, let's talk about the jewels. First, the large cluster jewel setup. An 8 passive jewel with Sadist, Prismatic Heart, and Doriani's Lesson. The first medium cluster is a Megalomaniac. It has Advanced Guard, Prismatic Dance, and the last mod can either be Spiteful Presence or Sublime Form. However, this last notable can be skipped with a Grace Reservation Efficiency Mastery and more Reservation Efficiency on the helmet. And I point this out because a Megalomaniac with the same modifiers can be hard to find. Anyways, the other medium cluster has 4 passives alongside Quick Getaway and Basics of Pain. And lastly, for regular jewels, first a Forbidden Jewel combo for Arcane Blessing, which is gonna give us Arcane Surge whenever we hit an enemy with a spell. We also use a Watcher's Eye with crit chance while affected by hatred. And finally, a jewel with life, chaos resistance, and some form of crit multi. If possible, other DPS modifiers, such as global fist damage, spell crit, etc. And that should be it for the skill tree. Again, rather simple, nothing fancy. In fact, it's kinda boring to look at, but it works, so that is good enough for me. So with all of that said, let's wrap up this big boy boomer build. I gotta admit, at one point I was very afraid that I had fallen into a currency sink with this build. This was around the time where I wasn't using Awakened Spell Cascade. After trying regular Spell Cascade on the setup and feeling unimpressed, I was growing weary that this character was gonna crash and burn. However, once Awakened Spell Cascade was socketed, things took a turn and the ride became a smooth speedrun to 97. Having said this, I feel conflicted about the item that enables all of this, the Squire. Now, don't get me wrong, it is a strong build enabling unique shield. In fact, I'd say that alongside Aegis Aurora, it's one of the few shields actually worth a damn in this game's current balance. With that said, my hot take is that I don't think that the shield is worth 40 something exalts, which was the price I paid for it. Thankfully, I had currency from selling Crystallized Omniscience, so it didn't burn a hole in my stash tab. But my inner Mr. Krabs says that I don't think more than 30 exalts is a good price for it. I think something between 20 and 30 is a good asking price, but going beyond that feels kinda silly, though that is also my sentiment for things like Crystallized Omniscience and Ashes of the Stars. They are good, but not 40 exalts good. Though maybe I feel this way because I didn't loot the shield and instead traded for it. But my inner stingy self throws a tantrum whenever I think about the price. But that's just me. With that out of the way, despite the investment required, I actually feel very accomplished with this character. I had a lot of fun playing with it. It's one of those builds that once it starts ramping, you don't want to stop playing it. Sure, some things in the character are just decent and could use more refining, for example the Crusader influenced ring, or even the gloves, but that will require more currency, more playtime, more of everything, and at this point I'm ready to play another character, which more than likely will involve more Squire memes, because I plan to get the most out of the shield. Maybe that's gonna make me feel like the 40 Exalt asking price was actually justified. Anyways, I didn't actually want to play the league any longer, but with all honesty, I don't really have anything else to play right now, or at least anything I want to play. I'm waiting on Modern Warfare 2, Battlebeat, and to some degree Starfield. So I am in no hurry to move elsewhere. Unfortunately, I'm busy with real life stuff, so my time isn't as flexible. And while I agree that having an sporadic upload schedule doesn't help my cause, it's gonna have to be this way for a while. So with that said, thank you so much for watching the video. Take care, and until next time, hopefully sometime soon, peace out.